Good morning and very warm welcome to the fifth edition of the Delhi process. As you know, in 2013, we initiated this major program on India's approach on South-South cooperation, and which then get into a major landscape capturing the larger development cooperation metrics and also trying to bring in other actors. Last year and this year again, we have focused on just not on South-South cooperation, but we have also brought in our analytical frameworks issues related to triangular cooperation. As in our background note we have mentioned, India has evolved our new approach on triangular cooperation. Our Prime Minister has been suggesting several different dimensions of such partnerships and has also called for going beyond equator to identify the common challenges that the global community faces. He has also emphasized on issues that are there in terms of how we work together for these common challenges. Here, the Indo-Pacific and the IORA, they really bring in major heft not only to the Asian countries, but countries across Africa. We had requested Honorable Secretary General of IORA Secretariat, who has now joined us. Madam Secretary General, thanks a lot for joining us on the dais. And Dr. Nokwe is an expert in her own right on how IORA countries can move forward in terms of these partnerships. I'm also extremely thankful to Secretary Economic Relations in the Ministry of External Affairs, not only for his kind support, but Dr. Tirumurthy himself has been articulating our positions, not only based on his own field level experiences, but also insights on how policies and partnerships should be sort of adhered to when it comes to the principles and, of course, on the delivery. The FIDC Forum for Indian Development Cooperation Chairperson, Dr. Anuradha Chinoy, is also here with us, and she would, of course, be giving her remarks, but FIDC has been a very dear partner right from the beginning, and RIS has been the host for the Secretariat, so thanks, Anu, for your support. The other partner here is Professor Lee Xiaoyin, who is chairman of the NEST, the Network of Southern Think Tanks. NEST has been coming up with several publications, ideas on how South should look at this dimension of cooperation and engagement. So thanks, Professor Lee Xiaoyin, for this partnership. Last but not the least is Jorge Shedek, who has not only provided support to Delhi process, but has also organized one of the most impressive deliberations in Buenos Aires just a couple of months back. Thanks, Jorge, for being a big support and joining us in the inaugural session here. I would now invite my chairman, Dr. Mohan Kumar, for his welcome remarks.
Thank you very much, Sachin, and a very good morning to all of you. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you. In fact, if you were talked to some seniors, and most of you are much younger, and that's why I'm saying what I'm saying, if you were to talk to anybody who's about 50 and above, and you tell them RIS, the first thing that comes to mind is really South-South cooperation. This is one of the primordial objectives with which this was set up in the 80s. Since then, I'm happy to say RIS not only does what it does best, which is South-South cooperation, as evidenced by this conference, but we've also moved on to a lot of other things. And yet, it is important for an organization to kind of go back, revisit its raison d'etre, and find out what it's all about. So I'm very grateful to my team, led by Sachin, for putting this conference together, not just because RIS is all about South-South cooperation, but also because South-South cooperation itself has evolved. Countries have evolved, and South-South cooperation, along with it, has evolved. And therefore, this conference, for me, is an important landmark. I want to welcome, in particular, Dr. Nokwe, who is Secretary General of IORA, and as my colleague, the Director General, Sachin Chaturvedi, said just now, this organization has come alive, and it was always important, but because of the maritime dimension to the international order that we see evolving in front of our eyes, as the liberal international order pretty much gives way to an unknown, to paraphrase an American politician. So we don't know what is going to take its place, but I do believe, and I can say this safely, that the maritime dimension of the international order will play an extremely important role. So it gives me great happiness to welcome Dr. Nokwe, who's the Secretary General of IORA, to be the chief guest for this morning. I also want to welcome, in particular, the ministry, which really has got a symbiotic relationship with RIS. RIS was established by the MEA, so I'm particularly grateful to my good friend, Secretary Economic Relations in the Ministry of External Affairs, Shri Tirumurthy. He is literally running around, actually, with the PM traveling to his region. He has taken time out to be here, so I'm particularly grateful, and I'd like to extend a very, very warm welcome to him. To others on the days, I'm extremely grateful as well. Jorge Chedek, you know, I met him about a year and a half ago. Professor Anuradha Chennai has already been welcomed, and Professor Lee Xuan, thank you very much for being there as well. So what is this conference all about? I'm going to leave it to people who are going to make substantive remarks, but I think some innovations are in order. This is the 5th edition of the Delhi process, and we thought that trilateral cooperation deserves a place of its own. So you will find sessions on trilateral cooperation, and that is a theme that will underpin this conference. So that is the first. The second thing we have done is we've tried to see if we can have a session which will be chaired by Ambassador Amar Sinha. He's there somewhere. Yes, thank you, sir. So that will be about sharing of Southern experiences. And that is important as well. I mean, it is true that the South has evolved and South-South cooperation has evolved, but until we share best practices and exchange, it's got to be an ongoing process, especially with the kind of threats, challenges, call it whatever you like, and it's got artificial intelligence, robotics, just the changes that are happening around the world. I believe these are important. I want to conclude really by saying that RIS is extremely happy to welcome all of you, very proud that we have not lost our mojo, if you know what I mean, South-South cooperation. And finally, I just want to, since I see a lot of young people in the audience, I said the same thing yesterday, so Ambassador Preeti Saran will forgive me. There is this book, I think, that needs to be read by all of us, Michael Patterson, and it's a book called The Leveling. And he talks about what is next after globalization. He's a Princeton economist who has written this book. I think it's a book worth reading. He talks of a multipolar world emerging with absolutely no rules of the game right now. And he puts a question mark over India as to whether it is a pole. He admits that US, China, EU are already poles. I think it's an interesting book. And I think South-South cooperation, to me, whichever way you look at it, globalization is coming to an end. It's not something that you have any control over. If that is true as a proposition and you accept it, then I would say South-South cooperation and trilateral cooperation becomes even more important. Because if nobody is there to help you, you've got to help yourselves, frankly. I see no alternative to that. So with those words, I'm looking forward to this conference. I'm very grateful to each and every one of you for making it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Kumar. Thanks a lot. Now I turn to the Director of the UN Office on South-South Cooperation, Jorge Chedek, for joining us and welcoming everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaturvedi. Authorities, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, all protocols observed. Dear participants, we met here last year in a different room, smaller room, actually. That also shows how much Delhi continues to expand. And the expansion being a recognition of the increasing importance and the great contributions this process is making to the evolution of thinking and the political debates on South-South and triangular cooperation. I said we met last year, and last year I was making a plea because, as Ambassador Kumar was mentioning, we were on the road to the BAPA+40 conference that took place in March of last year, this year in Buenos Aires. And the plea we made was that we needed to really broaden the debate on South-South and triangular cooperation. We know that, and I know personally, and that's why I'm so committed to this cause, that is a real deal maker in terms of changing the world for the better, in helping us achieve the global agendas that we have to achieve. The South has produced extraordinary results. Imagine when we had the first conference in '78, if we could have foreseen that 2 countries of the South are literally reaching to the moon. And we're getting there. Congratulations, China, congratulations, India, on that. Where we could think that trade among countries of the South went from $600 billion in 1995 to $5 trillion in 2017. That 1/3 of the foreign direct investment flows are among countries of the South. So really we have a radically different reality, and the debate had not caught up with that. We have not achieved the full recognition of South-South cooperation. We have not achieved agreement on the importance of triangular cooperation when a third party participates. We have not agreed also on how to strengthen the institutional frameworks to get more and better South-South cooperation. And we have not reached any agreements on how to report and establish the impact of South-South cooperation. So to summarize, at the end of last year, I was bordering an ulcer because all these issues were in the air, and none of them were settled. And something very remarkable happened in the negotiating process. And I think there was a lot that was the result of processes like this, that established a platform of thinking that really gave many countries of the South the confidence to engage this process in a different way. So the result of the conference went in many ways beyond our expectations. One, it confirmed the importance of South-South cooperation as an essential element to achieve the 2030 agenda. Maintaining, as we maintain, that this does not include any diminution of the responsibilities of northern countries to continue their process. It increased the scope of South-South cooperation in terms of the areas it covers. It's technical cooperation, it's trade, it's investment, it's transfer of technology. There are many areas that are now covered. It enhanced the actors that are part of South-South cooperation, not just central governments, but local governments, academia, think tanks, many of which are represented here. Actually, this is a very good BAPA meeting because we have governments, local governments, NGOs, private sector, etc. And also it calls for strengthening institutional arrangements. I will participate in other panels and also come here mostly to listen, because this document opens a lot of possibilities for many processes. And I really salute that this session will put a lot of emphasis in triangular cooperation and on indicators for impact of South-South cooperation, and we look forward to the leadership and engagement of countries of the South in producing that, and particularly of India. And we really look forward to your strong engagement in that. I want to finalize at this stage by saying that South-South and triangular cooperation have the potential to really change the world. And one thing that we really need to get out of this meeting is how we can communicate this to other audiences. In many of our countries, we still look for solutions coming from the north. We still feel that the best answers are the ones that come from developed countries. We have to show that many times the answers to our similar problems are coming from countries that confronted similar challenges. And at the same time, we have to find ways to legitimize South-South cooperation in countries that still have severe problems. How we can justify devoting resources, devoting energy to help other countries when we still need to help ourselves. And to do that, we have to show that it's a win-win-win situation. Win for the country that provides, win for the country and the partner that receives, and win for the world that will be better if we do more and better quality South-South and triangular cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jorge. May I now invite Professor Anuradha Chenoy, Chairperson of the Forum for Indian Development Cooperation, FIDC.
Thank you, DG, friends, co-panelists, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here on behalf of the FIDC. As we stand on a more precarious world than ever before, I would argue that I believe that South-South and triangular cooperation has to take on new, innovative, and leading responsibilities. This means we need to take off to some extent and move on from old binaries and established methodologies of reciprocities, retributions for historical wrongs, without ignoring the deep lessons from historical experience, but recognize also the new challenges posed to us. In this endeavor, the collective process of South-South cooperation, in which RIS has played a major role since 2013, has been taking concrete steps. And I would argue that one of their major inputs has been the centering of the Sustainable Development Goals into all the work of SSC. At the same time, the approach of the development practitioners and civil society has proven correct to some extent that development has to be combined even as it is differentiated. Inward nationalism, which includes trade nationalism, development at the cost of the other, exclusionary socio-economic practices that scapegoat others, is bound to fail not only for a major economy or a major power that ignores its own historic practice, but for others who hit back in the same vein. It is the voices from the Global South that have showed continuously how deeply interlinked policies are, and ultimately, economic security, social security, environment, climate are interlinked. If you separate one, you will tear into the others. This is the law of nature and our collective and common lives which cannot be ignored. Therefore, I would argue in conclusion that the aim of this conference is to scale up South-South cooperation and triangular relationships, where impact assessment is used to not only showcase, but to show transparency and accountability, and to explore the potential of these new areas. In this ambitious program that identifies very specificities like the health sector, the role of agricultural value chains, sharing technology, and other such critical measures, I believe that our outcome document, which we will discuss tomorrow, we hope to make some very clear proposals in this regard. I wish all of you a very fruitful conference. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anu. Now I would invite Professor Lee Xiaoyan, Chairman of the NEST, the Network of Southern Think Tanks.
Your Excellency, Dr. Mohan Kumar, my friend Sachin, Professor Sachin. First of all, let me just express my sincere gratitude for Ministry of External Affairs and the race to for inviting Chinese delegate and all NEST members to come to this conference. And I personally, as the long-term partner of RACE, I have attended actually all, but I remember not last year, the Delhi SSC process conference. And I like to, and I was, I have been personally very much impressed by the capacity, strong capacity of RACE to mobilize resources and to organize, wide range of audience to come, and also very much impressed not only myself but also member of our NEST members, all our NEST members, and I can speak. I hope on behalf of them that the influence the RACE has been able to exert on a number of global issues, particularly in terms of reform of WTO and international development financial institutions, as well as the G20, particularly G20, and also other areas in terms of international development architecture in general, and social cooperation, and recently added another dimension of international cooperation for triangle cooperation in particular. And as my good friend Mr. Chadwick also mentioned here. And therefore, I'd like to use this opportunity briefly to offer my observation, some of my observations on the issue of social cooperation. I remember during the second Delhi conference, and I also stood on stage to call for what I call the new social cooperation, which I highlighted that the new social cooperation move beyond traditional political dimension in terms of solidarity and other issues, but the new social cooperation has actually been able to move very much wider spectrum, even much more materialized and capitalized than ever. Therefore, the social cooperation has become a major moving force to changing a global development structure. So that was the point I remember and I made a few years ago here in Delhi. But today, I also like to address another issue, which I consider it is quite important, is that there were three major forces which helped the rise of the South. Number one was decolonization and post-colonialism. That was set in end of 1940s and 1950s and continue develop in 1960s, 70s, both ideologically and politically and also economically, and fortunately led by the US, not only by US, but mainly by US. And the second one was a strong moment start from 1960s, 70s, driven by the Latin American countries for the world economic new order, particularly look at the trade issues, world trade issues. Well, that's second area, very important area. Of course, we have another fourth side by the One Conference for the social cooperation, but I was looking for more like this. Third one, more economically, is the changing structure, global economic structure, looking for the labor-intensive sectors transfer to the southern countries and the rest of the South. All these three, I would like to map all the three major forces, which helped greatly the rise of the South, in particularly helped rise the so-called emerging economies. And China has been one of the major beneficiaries from that process, and India as well, and many other southern countries. Now, the issue, problem, critical issue now is that these three, what I call three positive forces and the favorable to southern countries, to developing countries, these three major forces actually greatly challenged, very, very greatly challenged by the current tendency and the current rise of protectionism and also the forces against multilateralism and other issues. So this is the area. And therefore, and I'd like to raise the issue today that how the South-South cooperation can and help to break through the obstacles coming from that kind of outside force to undermine these positive development forces, which we have been really not relying on, we have been developing ourselves jointly. And therefore, and today, I'm very glad to see the agenda of this fifth Delhi Social Cooperation Process Conference started, of course, already started early, started last year, but started to address very, very powerfully another dimension for the social cooperation, for the triangle cooperation. And therefore, you see, the Delhi conference here initiated two dimensions of powerful debate. One is the social cooperation, the cooperation between the southern countries, and whether the cooperation among the southern countries can actually contribute not only to ourselves but also to the global development. So this is one area where I like, really, and support and admire and support the race and also the conference here. And a second dimension I call for SEN. SEN means the southern country, emerging countries, and northern countries. So this is called triangle cooperation. Narrowly speaking, triangle cooperation. And that two dimensions give a very powerful way for the southern country, first among southern countries, and the bridge from the southern country emerging and the northern country. Looking that kind of direction, I'm very happy to attend this conference again, and with my delegates, Chinese delegate, and also the next members, and also I'm happy to see all of you here to support the South-South cooperation and the triangle cooperation. I wish this conference will succeed and get what we expected. Thank you very much for this.
Thanks, Professor Li Xiaoyan. Thanks to all our institutions who have partnered in this event and extended words of welcome to our delegates. Our chairman also wanted to acknowledge presence of a dignitary here, Professor Muchkund Dubey. So please, and then I continue.
Thank you very much, Sachin. No, I just wanted to say that I'm extremely proud to recognize the presence of Ambassador Muchkund Dubey, who is here with us today for several reasons, but I will start with a personal reason. The first ambassador for a foreign service officer is always important, and he leaves an indelible imprint on you. So I landed in Geneva 1982 December without knowing how to spell multilateral diplomacy. So I can honestly and proudly say, and I hope to some extent I've done him proud. That's all I can say. You can never do Ambassador Muchkund Dubey completely proud because his standards are very high. But I think I've done a reasonable job. But it's fair to say that I cut my multilateral teeth with Ambassador Muchkund Dubey, although I was reporting to Lakshmi Puri on human rights. But I'm really very happy and very proud to see you, sir. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, may I also request you to welcome our two dignitaries with a bouquet of flowers? So please bring. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Friends, as I'm all set to invite the two dignitaries to address, let me mention some unique features of Delhi 5. And as you might have seen and you might have got in your folder a two-page agenda this time, which is very intense, and as you would see, a lot of effort has been made in terms of getting all different dimensions of South-South cooperation covered. But that's not it. If you see in the folder, there are 3 other sheets, and these actually reflect the new initiative with which we have planned Delhi 5. And they come in as I was discussing with Secretary ER, the idea of providing an enabling platform for universities to connect with the work that think tanks are trying to do along with the government. And that's where we have thought of an initiative immediately as we close Delhi 5 tomorrow afternoon with the valedictory session. Immediately after tea break, we would start 2 parallel sessions. One is providing what is called as Think Tank University Connect. So we have invited around 50 different universities from the country, and these universities, along with another set of think tanks, would be trying to explore how international relations, economic engagements can be further studied together by universities and think tanks. And that's a new initiative as part of Delhi 5 that we have unfolded. Second is the Young Scholars Forum, and this Young Scholars Forum would also start at 4:30 p.m. tomorrow, in which we have invited some of our former ITEC participants, and the condition was that each one of them would write a paper. Some 50 responded, around 28 could finish their papers, and they are here with us. So a big hand for all 28 of them. They have really put in a lot of efforts and would be condensed tomorrow after 4:30 till 7:30, and then continuing on Saturday. On Saturday, we have also invited our colleagues from SSC and Ambassador Sharing, Professor Mustafizur Rahman and Dr. Pushraj Pandey are all here with us, which is a grouping of the South Asian countries for spearheading work on regional cooperation. RIS has come up with a research study, and I could edit that with my colleague Sabyasachi Saha. Springer has brought it out. This book would also be launched on Saturday. Saturday, one more important thing we are doing, and those of you who are staying back are most welcome to join. It's a workshop exclusively on how we go ahead, as Chairman mentioned, about the idea of South-South cooperation's measurement. The next chairman also mentioned about South having its own say, and this is the reason why in your publication you would find this booklet which talks about Development Compact. The Development Compact is convergence of the modalities of the South, and this is what the 5 modalities we have been talking about. And with university professors, we would like this idea to go into their curriculum, and this is the reason why this time we made an extra effort to get young students from various universities. And I'm extremely glad that today here in this room we have 78 different students from universities. We have 53 nationalities in the room, and we have 16 international agencies, 48 think tanks, and 32 different universities which are participating. So it's a big ecosystem that we have tried to create. Private sector also we have roped in. So the Post-BAPA, the Buenos Aires Plan of Action, the multiple actors, the multiple agencies, and the multiple conceptual frameworks which are essential are all being leveraged for this process. And RIS has the have to do that because in the brochure that we have brought out, and in your folder you might have got it, RIS over the decades. So this is the work that RIS has been doing on South-South cooperation, not from 2013, Anu. We have been doing it right from 1983 onwards since we were established, and I'm very glad that Dr. Nagesh has joined us here. He has provided a lot of inputs and connected the whole dimension of South-South cooperation, not only with trade and investment, but also with technology. And of late, with our other colleagues, we have tried to bring in the connect with financing. And this then comes completes the larger issue that is there. On South-South cooperation, when we talk about the BAPA+40, the issues come in from different angularities and different dimensions. We have to move with extreme caution and extreme care so that governments and their work is somehow linked with the process that we have. And we are also extremely cautious that the think tanks and the universities are mindful of their national sensitivities. So the presentations that we have put together are bringing in this. And for the first time in Delhi process, we have got 9 different agencies. There is an exhibition outside. They have put up their work there. I'm extremely grateful to all the agencies. And their heads would be having a dialogue tomorrow with Ambassador Amar Sinha, who would be leading that panel. So these are some of the details of the conference, and some of this is also there on our papers that we have circulated to you. Our idea is to bring out a volume at the end of the conference capturing this new reality which is unfolding after the BAPA process, and also with the economic development that each of our countries in the South are going forward with. Anu has very rightly flagged that the rise of protectionism and closing of borders for n number of factors which facilitated economic and social globalization with the content that is required. Often people prescribe that as with human face. I think South has the ability to bring in the unique features of the South to this process of globalization, which would be extremely challenging. With these words, I once again welcome all of you, and now would invite Secretary Economic Relations, Shri T.S. Tirumurthy. He has served as in Bhutan and as director in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He has also served as Joint Secretary responsible for Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Maldives. He was also our ambassador in Malaysia. So he brings in diverse experiences associated with developing countries. So, Mr. Tirumurthy, you have the floor.
Her Excellency, Dr. Nokwe, Secretary General of IORA, His Excellency Ambassador Mohan Kumar, Chairperson of the RIS, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, dignitaries on the dais, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a privilege to welcome all of you today to this global interaction with stakeholders in development cooperation to address South-South cooperation and trilateral cooperation. This is a unique initiative of RIS to connect with all our partner countries for collectively exploring and introspecting on how best to strengthen South-South cooperation. I would like to commend RIS on their leadership on South-South cooperation under the chairmanship of Ambassador Mohan Kumar, and also commend his excellent team which has been working on this subject for a very long time. And MEA is truly delighted to partner RIS. I appreciate the partnership that the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, Forum for Indian Development Cooperation, FIDC, and the network of Southern think tanks, NEST, have offered in enriching the Delhi process. Friends, the recently held second United Nations High-Level Conference on South-South Cooperation, commemorating the 40th anniversary of the Buenos Aires Plan of Action, often abbreviated as BAPA+40, has come up with an ambitious work plan. The outcome document of the conference underscores the need to give enhanced focus on South-South cooperation. I appreciate the efforts by many of you present here, directly or indirectly, in framing the outcome document. At this juncture, I would also like to acknowledge the contribution of IPSA countries for bringing out last year a very timely declaration on South-South cooperation and for reiterating certain principles of South-South cooperation. That is, it is a partnership among equals, guided by principles of respect for national sovereignty, national ownership and independence, equality, non-conditionality, non-interference in domestic affairs, and mutual benefit. These principles provide the blueprint for IPSA partnership with countries of the South and are part of the wider South-South cooperation principles. However, as always, the challenge is how to translate principles into concrete action. We have seen how time and again, in spite of all the goodwill which countries have, there are vast gaps between what we finally achieve and the principles that we want to uphold. Therefore, even as you deliberate on new opportunities and new partnerships, kindly remember to constantly evaluate whether what you do meets the touchstone of the principles we have declared as sacred. Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi had outlined last year 10 guiding principles for India's engagement with Africa. But in effect, these guiding principles may well be the guiding principles for India's engagement with the developing world itself, that is South-South cooperation. The vision which our Prime Minister outlined is as follows: to intensify and deepen engagement, development partnership to be guided by partners' priorities, build on local capacities, and create local opportunities. Development partnership to be on terms that will be comfortable for partner country so that it liberates their potential and not constrain their future. Open up markets and make trade and investment easier. Harness India's digital revolution to enhance education, health, public services, financial inclusion, etc. Improve agriculture. Address challenges of climate change. Combat terrorism and extremism, including in the cyber sphere. Give enhanced focus on youth and their aspirations. Keep oceans open and free for the benefit of all nations, and together strive for a representative and democratic global order. Friends, I would like to underline certain aspects which you as stakeholders may like to consider while deliberating on the BAPA+40 decisions. And in this context, I would like to appreciate the publication which you have with you, 5 modalities of development compact shaping South-South cooperation, brought out by RIS. I would like to refer to some of the aspects which relating to these 5 modalities. No South-South cooperation can and should result in restricting the space for development or constrain the future of our countries. This may be self-evident, but if you start evaluating many of the South-South cooperation initiatives on this touchstone, you will find that there are some aberrations. These aberrations creep in right at the outset. If the terms of engagement in South-South cooperation are not reasonable. For example, India's own record of extending lines of credit to developing countries is an exemplary one. And we have extended more than $26 billion so far as lines of credit, not including the billions we have given as grant assistance. What stands out is that India has almost always tried to assist countries, including heavily indebted ones, in case they run into difficulties of repayment. Our terms are reasonable and transparent. It is therefore important that right at the outset, development partnership rests on a sustainable model of engagement on terms that are reasonable and appropriate. Further, in order to ensure that development is sustainable, it should naturally fit in with the national priorities of the countries concerned. India has always believed that South-South cooperation should be demand-driven and not supply-driven. With such an approach, we have been able to touch the lives of people the world over. Creation of local capacity and local opportunities are vital for success. Project implementation should be to finally hand over the project to the recipient partner country. In this, I need hardly emphasize India's record on capacity building and extending to developing countries. Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, ITEC, has completed 55 years since its inception and has now around 10,000 participants every year from more than 160 partner countries. We are now taking this to the next level by rolling out innovative schemes like e-ITEC to reach larger numbers. Some of India's leading institutions like the Indian Institute of Technology and other centers of excellence, both private and public, participate in this effort. Further, development partnership should equally be a vehicle for sharing cutting-edge technology, especially digital technology and artificial intelligence. India believes that high-tech is a necessity for developing countries to leapfrog into the fourth industrial revolution, as well as directly impact positively the lives of people, especially in the delivery of public services, education, health, agriculture, etc. Is South-South cooperation providing that option? If not, it's time it did. But it is equally clear that recipient partner countries should carefully evaluate the most appropriate options for them and avoid the digital divide so that the fourth industrial revolution is an inclusive one. Not enough attention is also being given to youth and their employment in the construct of South-South cooperation. Building sustainable infrastructure is only one aspect of development cooperation, however important they may be. But true sustainability comes in empowering the local population, especially the youth. Empowering the youth and creating opportunities for their employment needs to go hand in hand. Ideally, South-South engagement should be able to leverage trade and investment so that the engagement is sustainable and gets out of the development partnership cycle and becomes independent of it. While we do all this, we need to exercise care and prudence in institutionalization of South-South cooperation and while developing an impact assessment framework. I'm confident that you will all resist the temptation to construct a structure for South-South assessment which starts resembling structures put together by developed countries for North-South cooperation. This will go against the principles we have agreed on. As they say, substance should inform form. It is important that we let South-South institutionalization and framework develop more organically rather than rush to create an intrusive accounting framework for ourselves. Triangular cooperation has become another important vehicle to combine the best of North and South for the benefit of the South. India is working actively with countries like Japan, France, EU, US, and others to see how best Africa and Asia, and indeed other developing countries, can benefit from this tripartite construct. While there are challenges of bringing together two different systems of assistance for a common cause, we are confident that we can overcome such technical hurdles for the larger goal. To expand the idea of triangular cooperation beyond its triangular connotations, India has been instrumental in establishing with France the International Solar Alliance. International Solar Alliance has last year taken the decision to expand its membership to make it universal so that we can develop a truly universal solar grid. Prime Minister Modi has announced a line of US dollars 2 billion for solar energy projects, an example of how development partnership can venture into new and innovative areas. India is even working with some developing countries like the United Arab Emirates to assist Africa. Contributions from India, Brazil, and South Africa, IPSA, to the IPSA UN Fund in providing development support to least developed countries across the globe is also indicative of our commitment to the expanded idea of triangular cooperation. Prime Minister Modi had articulated the concept of reformed multilateralism. He articulated this first at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg last year, and then subsequently at the G20 as well this year. He had posed the question in BRICS that when BRICS started a decade ago, the countries in BRICS had wanted to reform the multilateral system. Now, 10 years later, when we have the challenges of unilateralism, protectionism, and others coming in, the question he asked is that how can we as BRICS try to protect the status quo of multilateralism? This is the time to reform multilateralism. And that is why BRICS started off in the first place 10 years ago. But 10 years later, we cannot come and start protecting the same multilateralism which we sought to reform. And therefore, he mentioned that instead of trying to preserve the status quo of multilateralism, we should promote reformed multilateralism. And that is what he had articulated. And I think it's extremely relevant in the context of the discussion that we are having on South-South cooperation, because it's important for us to see where South-South cooperation fits into this construct of reformed multilateralism. And I'm confident that South-South cooperation has a very crucial role in bringing about this reformed multilateralism. And for this, South-South cooperation needs to stick to its unique voice and to its roots and not get carried away by realpolitik. Friends, the Delhi process has assumed significance as it gathers academics, subject experts, policymakers, and practitioners for exploring various facets and features of South-South cooperation. As they say, substance should inform process. So let substance guide and inform the Delhi process. I would like to thank the RIS profusely for inviting me, and I would also like to commend RIS for the wonderful work which they have been doing all this while, and I'm confident that they'll continue to do in the future as well. And I would like to wish the conference all success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for very encouraging remarks. Thanks.